What's going on, y'all? This is your brother Chazz and your big brother Jai. How you feeling today after your broadcast yesterday?
Oh man, I'm doing well, man. I mean, I always like to do the back to backs. You know, it makes the time go by fast. Plus, the subject matter I think is important that we're going to be talking about tonight. But I want to start off by saying this broadcast can be seen every Wednesday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and we always talk about relevant subjects. And
Yeah.
tonight, as you look at the crawl going across the screen, our subject is going to be they didn't teach us enough about, and then we're going to talk about what we didn't get taught enough about, whether it's through our family members, whether it's through education, but whomever. But we're going to talk about what we need to know more about, because I think, Chaz, a lot of this stuff that we did get taught about, it really hurts us if you think about it.
Yeah, it does hurt us. And especially when you go a lifetime where it's like you're not really researching, you're not getting this information from your relatives or co-workers or things like that. It's a detriment. And especially when, like I said, nobody's actually explaining this to detail. So yeah, I do agree that it is detrimental, but that's why us as adults have to do our own research and our own due diligence.
And Chaz, I want to ask you this before we start getting into it on this broadcast called Adults Only Real Conversations, because this broadcast is for adults only who are serious enough and who's intelligent enough and who's mature enough to deal with these subject matters that we talk about. But I'm just wondering, when we say they didn't teach us enough about, are you suggesting that many of us don't do our own due diligence when it comes to research as we get to when we get a certain age, or what?
It's a combination of both. It's a combination of us not doing our own due diligence, and it's a combination of the school system, the government, the news media. So when we say they, to let you guys know in a nutshell, they can mean a variety of anything. Like I said,
Okay.
the school system, the government, the news, the police, all these are,
Family, yeah.
yeah.
Anyone we got so-called trained or raised by.
Okay, we got a couple comments real quick. Let me go ahead and get those started before we get into the broadcast. Sister Barbara fires in here. She says, Hotel Brothers. We appreciate that. Sister Marie fires in here. She says, Hotel Family. We appreciate her. Okay, brother, let's go ahead and get this thing started here. And it says, the power of networking. Building professional relationships with people. That's basically the definition of networking. And this helps others while growing your own support system. Black people had a lack of access to established institutional circles, which often meant that networking was less available. So basically, what that means in a nutshell is when you don't have the proper funds and the correct teaching, you're not going to be able to hang with these other groups, especially these European people who have this wealth and money, if you're not getting taught the proper education on what networking is and how to hang with those people.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we talk about networking because a lot of us we need to network. That's how we make things happen. Is we come together and we look at a cause and we fight for that cause to be better for us. But we have to have a group of people. We have to amalgamate people together of like-mindedness so we can see that there is power in networking. And that's one of the downfalls, that they didn't teach us enough about networking, because a lot of times we're taught to be independent, and I understand that to some degree. But networking, especially in the African American community, Chaz, I think that's something that's what is called a lost art, if you will.
Okay. And I definitely agree. And it kind of is a combination, because when you add, when we're not networking, sometimes the networking turns into, in which we're going to get into a little bit later in the broadcast, where a lot of us are fighting, we're bickering, we don't see eye to eye, we don't know how to come together. And that's a recipe for disaster when you're not actually coming together. Now, I brought this picture on the screen here because this shows two African brothers. They meeting together, I don't know, at someone's home or what have you, but they're trying to get something off the ground. This brother has his folder on the table. They're getting to know each other and learning how to come up with a good game plan without all this fussing and bickering and fighting. So that's one thing in the African community that we need to do, is come together like these two brothers who are exchanging ideas.
And a lot of us don't want to come together. We rather be lone rangers where we want to do our own thing. And it really takes all of us. And I think this image is really part and parcel of what we need to do more of. Now, there are many organizations and groups that are networking, and I salute them. But I think we can do much more. We complain about our situation, but then a lot of times we don't even want to get together to do something about our situation. And that's what's the tragedy about what they didn't teach us enough about, and we need to do a better job of.
Mental health. Number two says this historical trauma has cultural expectations of extreme resilience. Now, when I'm speaking about that, I'm saying that they didn't teach us about mental health because it kind of makes us, and I've heard this a lot, if you have pain, weakness, or you need some kind of help, it's looked at
Uh-huh.
as weak, you're looked at as whack, you're looked at as less than. And when you have a mental health crisis, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, brother, sister, I need help. But they didn't teach us as a blacks because they know in the back of their mind, if we're not getting the proper mental health guidance that we need, they know it's going to lead to one, sometimes mass shootings. And number two, it's going to lead to a group of people just going haywire, losing their minds. And this is what the system as a whole wants for the African American community.
Yeah, and this whole ideal of mental health is something that we have overlooked. We have normalized sickness. And I told somebody this. So let me cough for a second here, real quick.
Okay.
I told someone this earlier today, and all this week I've been saying that many of us are suffering from a mental illness. But because we have normalized it, we look at it as if that's something that's just the way it's supposed to be. We see people that are sick and we say, oh, that's just so and so. That's how they are. But if we all had to go to psychiatrists, these counselors, these therapists, if the truth be told, most of us would have to be on some kind of medication because what we're doing now is really abnormal. And somebody might say, well, Jahi, that's really overkill when you say most of us. But when you stop and sit back and think about it, there's a lot of psychological issues that we have as people. And our parents didn't teach us about mental health because a lot of them were going through trauma. See, our family didn't teach us about it because they didn't know about it. And so now mental health is a big issue, and yet a lot of us still don't want to talk about it because it's really something that we're ashamed of, we're embarrassed of, and most of us should be on some type, we should be talking to someone because what I'm seeing on social media, what I'm seeing in my life, what I'm seeing in other people's lives, I'm seeing that that's not the way life should be.
I agree. And I'm going back to the point I just brought up. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. I just have a problem and a frustration with people who look as when a man or a woman asks for help, it's looked at as weak, it's looked at as whack, it looks at, you should be stronger than that, brother. And they do that a lot to the men in this society. Whenever a man breaks down or can't do this or can't do that, they always tell that man to toughen up. Don't show any sign of weakness. Or, when you have a mental health problem, they just throw it under the rug. And once again, that's why I brought up this on the screen here. It says July is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And this is a global thing that's going around all of society that we all need to be bring awareness to this because it's a terrible spot. And like you mentioned, brother, a lot of us, we're just going through a lot and we're not getting it addressed, basically.
Yeah, and then when you talk about mental health, it's like when somebody say, "Well, you guys mention that word often. What are you really talking about?" We're talking about your psyche. We're talking about the mindset that we have. We're talking about how we think that affects our behavior. We're talking about how we see the world. And a lot of that has been skewed by some things that have happened to us that affects us to the point where we can't even have a serious discussion about how to fix it. So they didn't teach us enough about it. Now they tried, but a lot of it, as you mentioned earlier, is up to us because we know we have mental health issues, but we won't dive deeper and see if we can get us some help. And that's one of the things that the African American community that we have come up very, very short in this aspect because we don't like to talk about it, Chaz.
Well said. Number three, the thriving communities after slavery. Now, when I say they, I'm talking about the education system on this in particular and the media, because the media wants African Americans to view themselves as low value, and they don't want to show the resilience that the African man or African woman has. Now, people as a society, I think they show us on the news and these TV shows as being ignorant, low class, low grades bums, and just, terrible people. But they're not telling them about how resilient they were, especially after slavery. Because you got to think about it. When a person has been subjected to that kind of torture, brutality, that will play a big role in a man's or woman's mental health, and it'll probably make them not want to do anything. So you have to play the other side of that and talk about how resilient and tough and strong they were to bounce back after a tragedy like that.
And that's true because many times when we talk about what we weren't taught, we weren't taught. And see, most of us think that Wall Street in Oklahoma, 1921, we think that was the only community that was thriving. There were many other communities that were thriving. I looked up some of these communities, and I mean, I'm just looking at them now, like Independence Heights, that was in Texas. These were communities after slavery that they didn't go outside of their community and their towns because they had everything they needed. They had their own stores, they had their own banks, they had their barbershops, salon, everything they needed, their hospitals. We don't think like that today. But we had, different places in Mississippi and Florida, in Oklahoma, as I said earlier. We had places in California, we had places in New Mexico, we had places in Colorado, we had places in Brooklyn, New York, we had places in Mobile, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina. These were all these communities that were thriving just like Wall Street. Now, Wall Street might have been a little bit more uppity from the standpoint of they had much more going on, but a lot of these communities, black people stuck together and said, we're not going to depend on anyone to do what we can do ourselves. So they supported one another. And so, but a lot of us haven't been taught that it was way more communities that were thriving after slavery other than Wall Street, because that's all we get a dosage of, which is great. But we need to start looking at more how these communities thrived and what can we do to duplicate that, to imitate that, so that we can have more going on for us after this slavery that we had to deal with.
I would suggest, like you just said, how we can duplicate that is simply by saying, you know what, us as a whole, we got a lot going against us, but we have to, and I know this is a cliche that we say this a lot, but we have to come together because that's the only way we're going to duplicate it. No matter what state you're in, no matter your race, as far as if you're light skinned, dark skinned, short, tall, you have to come together and become and say, you know what, me and you may not always agree because me and you don't always agree on a lot of things, but that doesn't make us, fight. I don't talk to you anymore. I delete your number out of my phone and all this kind of foolishness. And I think that's what's missing in the black community is that when we have a minor disagreement, we let that take us over the deep end. Number 4, conflict resolution. Now, why, and when we say they, I'm talking about the educational system on this one. There were big funding gaps in the educational system, and this historical exposure leads to high stress environments. And this one, I got this picture here, this African-American brother. These two here look like they were going back and forth. Now, it starts off like this, and it starts like this for a few seconds, and then one guy gets the best of the other. They start fighting, pushing, shoving, stomping each other out, and conflict resolution is basically saying, you see, I got it down on my notes. It's turning disagreements into a peaceful, workable situation. Now, right now, these two brothers don't seem like they get along, but I'm hoping within a 5-minute span that they say, we do understand each other's points, and we're not going to let this tear us apart. But this is how it always ends up starting off, man.
Yeah, and we need to look at that second word, which the resolve part. We don't work towards resolving things as we should, and I want to encourage everyone tonight that's watching this broadcast. We all have conflicts. That's a part of our life. But we should be willing to want to make amends with people because sometimes we can't always have our way. And we have to meet people sometimes in the middle. But the conflict resolution is something that we have not been taught because as I grew up, when I think about it, all I saw was conflict. I didn't see too many people resolving issues, but I saw a whole lot of conflict. Everywhere I turned, there was conflict. Even today, when I look around me, I see a whole lot of conflict on social media in people's lives, in my life, in other people's lives. But the resolution part is the part that's underestimated because we don't look to try to resolve. We want to keep the conflict going because, as some of the young ladies say, we're just messy, man. We're messy. We're a messy people. And in order for us to learn, we're going to have to know how to resolve the conflicts. And they didn't teach us how do you take a situation that's really, maybe very, very big. How do we make it small? And I don't know if a lot of us are willing to do that.
And they twisted conflict. I'm talking about in this society. Conflict back in the day was where two people would disagree, and then now it'll be that. Conflict nowadays, it sells, like you mentioned. It's all over social media. It's all in the barbershops. It's all in the hair salons. It's everywhere. And the thing is, it's like that's how most people, and I'm not hating on it, I'm just speaking facts. That's how they get most of their views is who's not getting who's beefing with who on the internet and who said what on this show, and then he fires back at him. And it's a what you call money grab because it seems like everybody's doing it now to get paid on social media.
And I think a lot of us we have accepted this, Chaz. We have accepted the conflict, but we don't want the resolution. Because when someone tease us off or someone does something to us, we don't look to say, well, you know what? I need to find out what's really going on in a nice way, in a real way. We want to grab something and hurt somebody because this is all we know. This is all we want to do. And it's like we just will never become the people that we should be because we don't want to resolve these conflicts that's just like popcorn popping up all over and in our lives instead of trying to sit down and say, this is a conflict we have. How can we resolve this conflict? What can you do to help this conflict? What can I do? And I'm sure we can come up with something where at the end of the day, we can say, okay, at least we resolve the issue that we had as opposed to letting it linger for years. I know people that have not spoken for years, man,
Yeah.
because of a conflict that wasn't resolved.
Number 5, African history before slavery. African American people held the vast political, economic, and military power before the transatlantic slave trade. Now, that's why they, as far as once again the educational system and the media, they didn't tell us these things because I got a couple pictures I wanted to grab here. This one is excellent. It says, when blacks ruled the world, ancient Hebrew and black history before slavery. So this is showing the other side that we're not these low lives, we're not these scums, we're not these just evil people who are just out here to commit crime and have babies out of wedlock and all this foolishness. It shows you that there was a time that we held all this power, we held all this strength, we held all this fortitude. But the other news media, they doesn't teach us that. And I have one more picture here. That we were never taught. And it says that Mansa Musa, he was the richest man in history. He built centers of learning in Timbuktu. And you got a little bit of other things that you guys couldn't see. I should have made this bigger. But this shows you that us African Americans before slavery, we held so much wealth and power. But see, that doesn't get talked about because they so used to showing us as these evil scumbags of the earth.
Yeah, we had so many different kingdoms before slavery. We had so many different great African nations. And the thing of it is in school, they're not going to teach us this because they don't know it themselves and they don't want to know it themselves. And our family members, we have been so diluted in our thinking that even we don't know enough about it. So we can't teach our children. So we send our children to these places and they dumb our kids down and we complain about the very places that we send our children to, all because we're not interested in African history. Now, before we had an excuse as to why we didn't know our history before slavery, but now we have no excuse because we have to, as you mentioned earlier, research. We have to look up things. We have to investigate and find out what type of people were we before slavery, because most of the books that we look at today and most of the conversations we have in our circles, it always starts after slavery or during slavery. And that suggests to our little kids that we were nothing. But when you start talking about the great empires of ancient and Axiom, the empires of ancient Egypt, when you talk about the all these different the empire that was at Timbuktu, when you talk about all these different African empires that were going on, we have to be able to share with those people something that's going to help us so that we can get out of this mindset of we never did anything. until lately here. And even now, when you think about it, you can't really talk too loud about that because what have we done? What have we done?
I got a question. Why? And some people may say you guys need to quit talking about that. Everybody's not out to get you, but it does seem like there was a conspiracy or something to make us blacks look like these thugs and criminals and low lies. So my question to you is, why does it seem like the African Americans as a whole are painted out to be that way?
Well, because of racism. That's the answer. Because racism is when a group of people want to control the economics, they want to control, they want the politics, they want to control the resources, and they've done that, and they continue to do that. So they keep us in a situation where they make us look like the bad guys when they are actually the ones who raped, pillaged, robbed, and did everything they could to put themselves in a position of so-called leadership right now because they have all the hospitals, all the stores, all the banks, every factor of life for the most part. I don't say we don't have any, but because they have the majority of them, they're privileged. These people use that against us, and that's why we should be looking at what we're talking about. Teach our children about what happened before slavery. Show that we came from great people, and we
Yeah.
still are great people. But because we don't really care about our own selves, and because we've been dumbed down, a lot of us don't think that that's important.
Wow. That was well said in a nutshell. Number six says education continues long after school ends. Now I got this brother. His name is Isaac, and he basically says here, education is something that you can. I misspelled. I thought it said that you can't finish, but that's what I was wanting to say, that you can't finish because you can't. Here's the thing: even though after school they tell you all these things, you go get this education. That's fine, but you still should be learning. You still should be expanding. You still should be trying to get these things because some people think that education, like you said, stops after high school, but you should always constantly be learning because what happens here is, like we mentioned earlier, when you're not reading, when you're not expanding your mind becomes dull, and then you start to have all these ailments, and now you got to go to the doctor to get all these things prescribed. But education, it never ends, and I agree with this point 100%.
Yeah, they didn't teach us enough about education continues long after school ends, and that's one of our downfalls. Is that we suffer with what is called aphasia. The brain is not firing the way it should because we're not putting anything into it. And I've often said this on this broadcast. If you put nonsense into a computer, you're going to get nonsense out of a computer. The United Negro College Fund had a saying, the mind is a terrible thing to waste. Well, if that's the truth, and it is, a lot of us are wasting our minds because we don't understand the importance of after we get out of school, that education is something that we have to continue to engage in until we leave this earth, man. We're always learning. We should always be seeking knowledge. But a lot of us don't want to go to anywhere but a place with a person swinging from chandeliers, or a man with a ankh, or a man with a crescent moon, or a woman standing up in front of us chanting, blowing all this, smoke. See, we don't understand, man, that education is something that continues with us. And saying that, that leads me into this basically segue. Speaking of education, San Antonio, it's time to heal, but healing begins with truth. On Saturday, September the 12th, Cries from the Womb, which is our organization, our entertainment organization, will be presenting, I should say, the Healing Through Truth Symposium. This is a powerful community conversation addressing abuse, trauma, survival, healing, and hope. This is more than a symposium, Chaz. It's a safe space to speak, to listen, to learn, and to begin to heal. There will be counselors there. There will be abuse survivors, mental health professionals, faith-based healers or leaders, I should say, victim advocacy organizations, and family therapists to help us with abuse. The Healing Through Truth Symposium is because what we refuse to talk about, we cannot heal from. Saturday, September the 12th, from 10:30 a.m. until 1:30 p.m. at Greater Corinth Baptist Church, 500 South New Braunfels Avenue, at the Hamilton Lock Fellowship Hall, San Antonio, Texas, 78203. And I'll mention this later on in the broadcast, but it's time for us to heal, Chaz. We've been done wrong by so many facets of this life. And abuse, whether it's sexual, whether it's mental, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, whether it's psychological, whether it's neglect, we've been done wrong for so many years. Now is the time for us to come together and say, we need to heal. And that's what this symposium is all about.
Let me ask you a quick question before we get back to the program about the symposium. Who was the person that created this? Was this your idea?
It was my idea based upon the play that we did a play called Broken Glass Revised, which was the second of a trilogy, which we have another one coming up next year. But we
Okay.
figured that we didn't just want to be on stage acting when we talk about abuse and showing what happens when trauma hits us as African American people. We want to continue to let people know this is bigger than a play. This is a reality. It's headed by a brother by the name of Will Harrell, who is our marketing director, an advertising agent. This guy has a mind that is basically a genius, and he's excited about this symposium, and so am I. We're working closely together to make sure that people in San Antonio can come out and be healed and hear what's really going on with us, because Chaz, a lot of us are really suffering, and we don't want that to be the case. So this is bigger than a play. This is just an extension because we want people to know that what we do on stage is one thing, but what happens in life, that's something totally different.
Now, for all the people in the hood who may not have that much money, I'm going to ask to get this out. How much is the ticket? So you guys haven't came up with a price yet.
It's free. That's why we have no excuse. This
Okay.
symposium, Healing Through Truth, is a free symposium. All you
Okay.
have to do is show up and listen to how people can help us deal with the trauma that we face, because all of us have been through so much. And we're going to be able to help people. So we don't want to charge people because we can't charge people for healing in this instance. So we want people to know that this is free. That was a good question, because a lot of times that's the first thing people don't address. But this is a free symposium. We
Okay.
have Dr. Eric Johnson's going to be there. I mean, we have just different people that's going to come out and speak and let us know we have to do something about our condition, as opposed to complain about it all the time and not be willing to do anything. So we're asking everyone to come out, because
Yeah.
I know we've all been touched, and you're going to enjoy it, but you're going to learn something. And hopefully the bottom line is you're going to be able to heal and get the help that you need, because a lot of us are struggling right now, man.
Well, we all should be flocking to that. Like when you have something free, we always jump on it, and that's what you call something that's free. So we can get down there. And my last question is, once again, when is the date for the symposium?
September the 12th, that's a Saturday, from
Okay.
10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate you for sharing that with us. As we get back to the program here, number 7 says healthy relationships. Now, the media doesn't teach us about healthy relationships because they always want us bickering, having anger toward each other, animosity. If we knew about how important health and relationships were, we would know that supportive ties the body. It helps fight off illnesses, boosts our overall wellness, and studies show that connected people live longer, healthier lives. Now, with all that being said, is that I didn't know that certain illnesses, if you have now it's not what you call a magic trick to where it heals everything, but more healthy relationships are helpful because it helps fight off these illnesses, these weakened immune systems. And it doesn't have to always be where me and you don't see eye to eye and it goes haywire. We have to stop doing that and learn to say, you know what, there are healthy avenues, even if we have to stop, talking for a few seconds. But these healthy avenues and healthy relationships aren't taught, once again, because the media, the police, the government, they want to see blacks either A, in prison, B, in the grave, or C, in a mental institution. Those are my beliefs why healthy relationships aren't taught.
That's well said, Chaz. And I think when we look at this, I've been working on this particular subject here, the healthy relationships in my own life. That's one of the best things you can have is a healthy relationship. Whomever you have as a friend or relative or family or coworker or whomever, I think it's important that we have healthy relationships, because most of us, we don't take this in stride. We take people for granted. So that means if it's going to be healthy, I have to work on my end. I just can't assume that things are going to be as such. I have to be the best person that I can be. And so I got to make sure that I take care of the relationship. I have to water the relationship. I gotta let the relationship get sunshine, and so that the relationship can grow. And that's what makes it healthy. And that's why sometimes you see people and you say, man, these people seem like they're really friends with everybody. It's not about just being friends. It's about working on those relationships so that when you enter a room and you see people that you know, they enjoy your presence as opposed to frowning up because they know you full of you know what.
Ooh, wee. You hit me with that one at the end. That was a good one. Number 8, how bad credit affects our lives. Now, blacks aren't taught this, and this is a bad thing what I'm getting ready to say here. It makes borrowing money from check cashing places harder and harder and much more expensive. It creates high interest rates, and also credit cards cost much more because the banks charge you for higher risky borrowers. And that's a terrible thing because we go around thinking life is good. But for example, if you have bad credit and you try to get an apartment and this is your first time, they run your credit. The landlords have the authority to reject that because they look at you, which I don't always agree. I know it's tough in the black community, but if your credit is bad, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get that apartment. You're not going to get that house. You go to check cashing places because you're strapped for cash. They can deny you too because they're basically saying, you can't pay this money back. And if we give this money to you, you're probably not going to pay us back. So these are how all these things affect the black African-American community because we're not being taught by the education system and we're not being taught by some of our family members about how it is when you got a credit score, and I'm going to get ready to pass it back. It's credit score 300. You can't go get a washing machine from Best Buy or a dryer from Best Buy because it's so low. And these are reasons why we have to teach our young ones how important credit card credit debt is.
You just said a mouthful towards the end. The rest of it was good too. But our children, we don't understand credit and how it works. And this is why we need to get people on our broadcast that's going to come in and talk about credit and how it affects our lives. Because a lot of us don't understand that if our credit is bad, a lot of times they use that against us to make it worse. Because now we have to borrow or do things that we shouldn't do, and it puts us in a deeper hole. And this is why we never understand the importance of how bad credit affects our lives. And there are people out in the community in San Antonio, African Americans, who always talk about, how we should have good credit, but they don't know how to explain to us what does that look like from a practical standpoint, from a pragmatic perspective. What does good credit look like? What is good credit? How do we achieve good credit? See, these are the basic tools that we have not been taught. But most of us sit around and complain and talk about others who don't have good credit, but we don't have courses and classes that we should be in where we can talk that are probably free or little or nothing that we can teach. How does this affect me when I find myself having bad credit? So I think that's what we need to continue to do is look for people who are experts in these fields that can come on and talk to us about how we can clean up our credit and keep it clean. And I know a lot of it is like our mindset with spending because a lot of us don't understand the importance of how to save a dollar. We all everything we get, it goes out just like a water faucet. It just runs. It never stops. And so we got to have that discussion sooner or later.
Let me ask you this. Now, I talked about the getting denied apartments and the high interest rates. Now, I didn't really pay attention to this. Now, it's really starting to hit me. Let me ask you this if you know. At the third one, it says that if you have bad credit, this can affect job applications. My question to you, and this is a sincere question, what does a person's credit have to do with a person needing a job? Could you explain that to me? Like, what's the correlation between those two?
Well, I think sometimes some jobs require that you have good credit. And it's not many, but some of them require that you have good credit. And if you don't have good credit, you're not going to get that job. Now, most jobs are not like that. So you're right. That's why it's an enigma. But
Okay.
for the most part, most of us, our credit is really not good because of what we've done in the past. See, and we're still trying to what we call get ahead, but we're still trying to play catch up. And all of these professional people, all of these people that have things and that they know how what it took for their credit to be as such, they're not willing to share that with those of us who may struggle, who may not have ever heard that credit affects our lives. In other words, they didn't teach us enough about that. Because I know as I grew up, I knew nothing about credit. All I knew is my mother and father brought things, and they just kept buying things. And when I got older, that's what I wanted to do. But I didn't understand FICO scores. I didn't understand, credit line and all that. I just
Right.
did what I saw was done. And I think that's what we need to do, Chaz. We really need to have people on our broadcast that's going to talk about serious matters, because bad credit has affected every one of us. You can't even get a piece of bread. Many of us is
Mm,
because our credit score is so low. And what does it mean when it's low? What does it mean when you're standard? What does it mean that you have good credit? And even that, we don't want to use that in a negative light, because just because you have credit, that doesn't mean that you go out and spend everything. Every just
right.
because you got good credit, you want to buy everything you have. See, there's rules to this. There's a method to this. And many times I think as a people, we talk a good game, but a lot of us are not interested in helping those who really need help. And we all need help in this area.
Now you're a fair guy here. Before we move on to the next point, let me ask you: if you were in charge of this, would you sit back with a group of men or women, and would you suggest that if a brother or a sister or whoever has bad credit, would you tie that to the job application, or you wouldn't care as long as they show up to work and become good citizens?
No,
What
I
would you do?
think I think it's totally unfair. But that does say something about the way we think when it comes to finances and our fiduciary responsibilities. So I don't think that that has anything to do with our job situation or what have you, because if that's the case, all of us African Americans, or most of us, I should say, we're going to fall in that category. And once again, there we are being ostracized because of something that we didn't do to ourselves as far as put us in that bad predicament. The system did, and yet now we're going to be punished because we just don't have the means that other people have.
Number 9 says how stress affects the body and mind. They, as far as, and I keep saying they, I got to be clear, the media, the news media, and these TV shows, and a lot of them, they don't want us to know how stress affects the body, because they constantly want us running to the doctor, hooked up to these medication. Stress affects the body by causing high blood pressure. You get a faster heart rate. You're at a high risk of a heart attack or stroke. And last but not least, people who have high stress on the body have a hard time sleeping, constant exhaustion, trouble focusing, memory issues, and brain fog. Now, we've been telling you guys this every other week about how important stress is, exercise is, about how to get the body moving, because here's the thing, there are things that bother us, but I think if you balance it with enough exercise and enough walking, you won't have these issues. But see, the thing is, in the black community, we pride on being stressed out. When I call you, what's going on, bruh? Man, I'm stressed out with them kids again. They getting on my nerves. Or I'm stressed out with these loans. I can't pay them back. All of these things, and this messes the mind up. But like I said, with this high blood pressure, faster heart rate, a high risk of a stroke, these are not good symptoms at all, bruh.
Chess, when are we going to get serious as a people? And I don't mean just some of us. I mean, by and large, all of us as a group. When are we going to get serious? You and I have done many shows, and I remember one we did on stress, and we talked about the hippocampus. We talked about the amygdala, and how when this thing gets stuck, we're always up in the air. And a lot of us are suffering from that as I speak, because we never got the help that we needed, I should say. And this stress has impacted us in such a way that we think it's normal to always be up in the air. If I ask you a question, if I say, "Well, Chad, did you get a chance to drink water yesterday?" And instead of you saying, "No, John, I didn't get a chance," "No, I didn't get a chance," you're hollering because the amygdala is stuck. You see, This thing, the hippocampus is not doing what it's supposed to do, and so everything that happens to us, we're not sleeping right, we're not eating right,
Mm.
we're not responding to people the way we should. We're not doing what we should do as a people. We're eating salt, too much salt. We're eating too much sugar. We're not drinking water. We're drinking too many sodas, and it's like, and then stress on top of that. All that is like an amalgamation of a problem that has affected us as a people. And to this day, we do not want to talk about it because we look at each other and we see us as in good shape, but we're really not. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to leave it alone because I know a lot of people not going to understand it. So I'll talk about myself. I won't talk about anyone else. We're
Gotcha.
fat, we're
Mm.
overweight, and we don't want to do anything about that. And so we want to keep eating these things that we put this grease. We want to keep putting all this stuff in our system, and we're going to die
Mm.
a young age, as we did a broadcast on the heart attacks, the strokes, the diabetes, the medicine. This is just this is what's going on, and they didn't teach us enough about it because they were eating it too. They fed
Yeah.
it to us.
Yeah.
People will say all the time, man, them pig feet, man. I mean, you eat what you want to eat, but man, them pig feet, man, I got to get me some of them things, and it's like, but you instead of eating one, you want like 7 or 8 of them, and you're bragging that you this is the thing, man, that has affected us, and it has destroyed us, and it has added to the stress that we eat,
I
that
think
we do, I should say. Dr. Johnson, Eric Johnson, I spoke with him today. He said he's going to come on the broadcast soon, so he's going to come on. But he was telling me in his own way how nutrition, he said, that affects us, man. It affects how we think. And so he's going to come on and tell us a little bit more. But I'm just saying, we as a people, Chaz, I maybe you've been asking me questions all day. Maybe I should ask you this.
okay.
What is wrong with us as a people? What is wrong with us that we see stress, how it affects us, but a lot of us don't do anything about it?
I think, like you mentioned, a lot of us don't see it as anything serious. They see these statistics, they see these videos on the news, and basically, we don't think it's serious. We think it's something that we could just push under the rug, or all these two guys are hyping this up. So basically, I'll break it down to two things. Number one, we're not taking it serious, and number two, we think that this is something that'll just eventually go away. Now, I think this sister on the screen here is probably at a call center job. And at the top, it says, how stress impacts heart disease and the risk on Black people. This sister is going through a lot. She's frustrated. She's going through a lot. She can't really have a clear head. She's angry. She's tired. She's grumpy. And the Black, especially us Blacks, we're at high risk of, like I mentioned earlier, of heart disease, heart attack. And I hope when we get that brother on, that he explains all these things thoroughly, because me and you have been speaking this for years about how important exercise and water and all this stuff is. So I'm hoping when that brother comes on, he reiterates most of the things that we're saying, because I'm telling you, in the African American community, and this is no shame and this is no shot at anybody, our cabinets are full of high blood pressure medicine. Our cabinets are full of these tablets that we have to constantly take because the body is just stressed out. It's stressed
Yeah,
out, bro.
yeah. Maybe they'll listen to Dr. Johnson because, see, you and I are little peons. We're not big, but he's a doctor. So maybe they'll listen to him and then maybe they won't. But all we can do is tell people. But truth is truth no matter who spews it. But sometimes people rather listen to what they call a professional than
Right.
they do to two podcasters.
Okay. Okay. All right. Number 10 says the differences between wealth and income. I'll let you take that and then I'll piggyback off.
Right. They didn't teach us enough about the differences between wealth and income. The difference between wealth and income is as follows. Wealth is what you own. Wealth is what you accumulate. Your house that you have paid for, the things that you have that's it's worth a lot. Income is when you work for a job and you go to work and get your check. That's income. So income is what you get from your job on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, or if you're a salary, you may get it monthly. But wealth is what you accumulate. It's those things that when you leave this earth, you can pass on to your generations coming behind you. And we don't know the difference between wealth and income because no one taught us this. And because we don't have a lot of wealth, because the wealth that we have now as a people is only 3 point something percent out of
Hmm.
all of the African Americans. We only our wealth total to 3 something percent, and that's very low. Other people have so much wealth because they've done it in devious ways, but they have it. But who's going to come on a broadcast and talk about wealth? We rather talk about shaking our fannies. We will talk about calling each other the N word. We rather talk about all this nonsense about who go with who and how cute some guy is or how fine some woman is. We have lost, many of us, our minds, and this broadcast is to say we love you enough to say we're going to tell you. And yes, we're passionate about what we do, we're passionate about how we speak, but the bottom line is we're saying this because we are concerned, and we know that a lot of us don't know anything about wealth. Our children don't know about wealth. We don't know about wealth and income. And so that's basically a short summary of the difference between wealth. Wealth is what you own, and income is what you get when you work at a job, whether it's weekly or biweekly or monthly.
And I was going to piggyback and kind of take it to a different level. I think a lot of us blacks weren't taught about these differences between wealth and income is because I think when people are in debt and people are constantly having to pay back money, that benefits a certain class of people. And I think that was done strategically. And I know they may say, well, this guy thinks that it's a boogeyman under everything. But I think it is true that there was an intention because we know if we're constantly paying back money, we constantly don't have it, it puts us in a deficit, but it puts a certain group of people at a higher level. And I think that was strategically done. But like you mentioned, and some of us, we get it confused. We think, oh, I got a lot of money because we have, this income coming in from our jobs and stuff. But I think wealth is more important because, like you just mentioned a few minutes ago, well, if you don't have wealth, then you basically have nothing because your income is something that you're going to constantly be paying out.
And let me show you how sick we are as a people. Every year they put a report out as far as they call it spending power. And let's say if we have $4 trillion worth of spending power, we think that's something good. Basically, that's saying we're going to give that money or that wealth, we're going to give that to other people. So we're bragging on, man, we got X. No one else does that but African Americans. No one else does that, but we brag on how much we give to other people, and we call it spending power. And basically, you're saying, I'm giving this away to other people, but they didn't teach us about that. And once again, my heart bleeds for us. My heart bleeds for all of us because we're in a situation now where we have to be a little bit more sober. We have to be a lot more serious about this. And a lot of us, we play too much. We've been playing for many, many years, and now we're adults and we're still playing because we don't want to do what we have to do to make ourselves, put ourselves in a better position, even our children.
Number 11 says nutrition and preventative health. Now, blacks weren't taught this. And I think this on if you had grandparents, parents, uncles, whoever you grew up with, because at the time, I don't think they understood how serious this were. I think now we're in a day and age of technology, all the social media, and now we're getting flooded with all this information about how important diet is, how important wealth is, how important water is, how important all these things are. But I honestly think, and I'm gonna give the us blacks a pass, because back then when we grew up, brother, I don't think that our parents or relatives or whoever we grew up with, I don't think that they even knew. I think we just, getting chicken, French fries, ribs, steak, like you mentioned, pig feet and all this stuff. I don't think that the people we grew up with knew how important this was. So they just fed it to us and they thought that they were doing something, but it was by accident. So I'm going to give them a pass on this. But now in this society, there's no more excuses. You should know this stuff by now.
Yeah, and the thing of it is that second part, preventative health. This is what happens to us, and I have to be fair, but I have to be honest. When we were younger, we all did things that we put things in our body. We didn't prevent things. And now that we're older, all that stuff we did It is catching up with us. It is turning us inside out. It has us crawling up the walls. It has us losing our eyesight. It
Yeah.
has us craving for things that we shouldn't want at this age, like chocolate. It does so much to us because we never prevented it. See, we
Yeah.
drank, and I'm not coming down on one person. I'm talking about just the preventative health aspect. We drank so much, now we have cirrhosis of the liver.
Mm.
We smoke so much that we can't even walk a block now. So that's what I mean by it's catching up and has caught up with us, and myself included. See, when you're young, you think you're invincible. So you
Yeah.
can do anything you want to do. You feel as though you cannot die. But when
Yeah.
we get older, you go to the doctor, and once they hook you up to find out what's going on, every light on the machine lights up because now you see now you see that this thing is real, and
Yeah.
now all you got to do is they're going to pump us with all this medicine because that's the only thing that's going to keep us alive is medicine until that even destroys us, because after all these years it then went against our organs, and now the game is almost over, Chaz.
And like I said, I'm gonna give a big pass. And this is like I said a few minutes ago, I'm gonna give a pass because I truly think that the people that we grew up with, I don't think that they knew, bro. I really
Yeah,
think that
yeah,
they were just
I
little
agree with
ones.
you. But what about us though, Chaz? What about, see, you could pass all you want to, and you should. But what about us, Chaz? I mean, we're in the age of social media, high technology, AI. See, we talk now. I really don't want people to misconstrue what I'm trying to say tonight, because
Okay.
I'm saying they didn't teach us enough about it. But some of this is going to be up to us, Chaz. If you are a parent, you shouldn't be feeding your child pizza every day. You
Yeah.
shouldn't be feeding your child greasy foods every day. See,
Yeah.
these are the practical conversations, as I said earlier. These are the pragmatic conversations that we should be having. But unfortunately, we don't want to have these discussions because we know that what we're talking about, we're all guilty of. And
Yeah.
no one likes to be told, especially adults, no
Yeah.
one likes to be told we ought to stop doing something, because most of us adults, we think we know everything, Chaz. And I will go to my grave saying that. You cannot teach an old dog new tricks.
And like we talked about earlier, we can't wait to have the brother. Is his name Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, Dr. Eric Johnson.
We cannot wait to have that brother on. We don't have the exact date, but he's going to reiterate a lot of these things and tell us about how healthy nutrition is important. And when we lack certain nutrition, it messes us up because our brains aren't functioning properly. We get fatigued easily and all these things. So eventually we'll have him on, and he'll explain some of these things too.
Yeah, we're probably going to ask brother Will to come on, Will Harold, because he's into networking himself. You see, he's a
Okay.
marketing strategist. He can show us how, when we do things, we talk about making money. He can show us how to make money. Now it may cost us a little bit, but in the end run, you're going to make money if you really want to make money. You see, but these
Okay.
are people that been there and done that. But we got to listen and we have to comply, Jazz.
Okay. Number 12 says how to start and operate a business. A lot of us weren't taught, especially in the education system, because they always taught us, excuse me, to spend, give your money to others, don't work for yourself. If you operate a business, you're going to take away a lot of money from these big corporations such as Walmart, Target, CVS, HEB, all these big companies. So they don't want us to start our own business because it takes away money from them, and they won't be able to profit from us. And us as blacks, we're so used to shelling out all this money. When you give them this idea, like, bruh, you need to start your own business, we get angry because we're so used to giving our money out. We take it as offense. But if you own your own business, it creates what you call a community where people are coming to give you money. You build rapport, and you don't have to worry about always shelling your money out to these big corporations.
There's a legal way to start a business. My parents and my relatives and my friends and my family and everyone I knew growing up, they never talked to me about operating a business or starting a business because, like you mentioned earlier, they didn't know. But there are legal ramifications as to how do you start a business? What is an EIN? What is a DBA? What is an LLC? What is a corporate business? How do you run a business? Who do you hire for a business? What kind of business right now do we need for African Americans to to thrive in? See, these are the basic questions. You just can't. And then, do you have the capital, the money to start a business? Which I know a lot of us don't. But these are the questions that we should be asking our children and getting them prepared so that should they go into business, they would be successful as opposed to waiting till they get older and just telling them, well, you ought to start a business. How? How do you, we again, and we need to get people on this broadcast the way I'm talking. We're gonna have everybody on the broadcast that's doing everything, but we need to get people on this broadcast that's going to say, this is how you start a business,
Right.
because we have not been told the basic ways to start a business, the tenets, what you need to start a business. Those are good questions, Chaz, that if we really ascertained, we would be able to understand that it may be a little bit less than we thought, but because we just don't know. We just look at other people's success and say, I want to be like that, but it costs them.
Yeah, and it's risky too to start your own business. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, but I think a lot of us, we want to start it because we can see all the revenue and stuff coming in. But if you're not properly equipped, and I hate saying this, but that business could fold up, and that happens to a lot, to where we have all these good ideas, which is fine. We want to make money, but see, we're not playing the other side of it. Is that some of these businesses, especially the mom and pop, because number one, they don't have enough money like Walmart and all these big businesses, and number two, they don't have constant customers and stuff coming
There
in.
you go.
So
There
now
you go.
the business shuts down. But we got a couple minutes left. I think we'll stop right here, and of course we're going to pick it up next week. And I want to give just some takes about what we talked about in a nutshell, how the government, the education system, the news media, how all these things have been taught to not give us the proper information on what these things are. Let me go ahead and get to one of them I was going to talk about here. Like earlier, we talked about healthy relationships. Why aren't blacks taught about healthy relationships? Number one, because they love to see us fighting. They love to make a mockery. And when I say they, I'm talking about the news media and all these other places. We also talked about how bad credit affects our lives. These credit card companies and these loan places, they're sharks. They know if we're not taught this information, eventually we're going to fall on hard times. We're going to have to go to these check cashing places. And to our face, they're going to tell us, ma'am, sir, I can't give you that loan. And we're cussing, we're irate, we're going off, making a scene in these places. But see, we weren't taught that because you're not paying these bills back. You're, in so much in the red. They're not going to give you the money. Now, I think it's messed up that some of these businesses are doing that, because at the end of the day, us blacks don't have the wealth as some of these other races. And then we also talked about how stress affects the body. We talked about why people on a accident here, the people we grew up with, they didn't know this information. But now there's no more excuses. We got all this information through YouTube, Google, rumble.com, all these avenues. There are no more excuses for us to not be equipped. Let me get to a couple comments real quick.
Okay,
Sister Mashana says, it's harder for us to start our own, but some of them, it's just fell in their lap. Yeah, some of them had wealthy parents and uncles who give them these things, and then they sit back and criticize us saying why we don't have this and that when they got it through a spoon fed. And then I guess she made a typo. She meant other races. But yeah, those are two good comments. We appreciate that. But what did you have to say? I know you were trying to get at something.
Yeah, I was just saying, you still got how to start our own business and operate our business. I know we're just winding down now, but I wanted to remind everyone of the symposium that's going to be September the 12th at Greater Corinth Baptist Church at 500 South New Brownsville Street. It's healing through truth, because we need to be healed, every last one of us. We know people who have been abused in some fashion, and so we're asking the community to join forces with us and come out for a time that you will never forget. We're going to have resources there to give away. We're going to have people that are counselors. We're going to have therapists. We're just going to have a safe space to speak, a safe space to listen. We're going to have a panel discussion. We're going to have just information that's talking about abuse. And that's Saturday, September the 12th from 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at 500 South New Braunfels Avenue at the Hamilton Lot Fellowship Hall. So again, we just can't stress enough the importance of us, pooling our resources together. This is free, so you don't have to worry about trying to buy a ticket or coming out buying anything. We're going to give away everything we have, especially the resources, because a lot of us need help, man. And I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to say other than we hope that you guys can come out and support this symposium, because this is it's bigger than just a play. This is something that's going on every day of our lives. Someone is being abused, and we definitely want to be able to be there as a community to reach out to show people that we truly love them. And this is our way of showing our love and not just talking about how much we love people.
That was well said. Well, we appreciate everybody that fired in here. Sister Barbara, Sister Marie, Sister Mashonda, all you guys. And if you didn't check this one out live, please check it out on the playback. And then next week, we're going to come back at you guys again with a part 2. We're going to reiterate some of the things: mental health, networking, why we weren't taught how critical and important these things were as teenagers and kids. Why were these things just, tossed under the rug? So once again, we hope to see you guys next week. And I appreciate you, brother, for having me on. And once again, listen to this outro song that we created, and we hope to see you guys next week. Take care.